later. All right.
What event was that, though?
Allie Fordyce took event number 1 of the day. It was the women's 1,500-meter prelim and the first of 2. Of course, the top 2 from each prelim automatically make it. She secured that, placing her spot in the final tomorrow. And then in the second prelim, Anna Hellwig of Villanova had the top time in the field. She did not disappoint, finishing strong down the straight. Next, in the women's 100-meter hurdles, we had a great event in the first prelim. It was Nikki Ezzi of Butler running a season's best time and potentially showing that she can vie for a gold medal tomorrow. In the second prelim, it was not quite as close. In fact, we had an upset in the second prelim. Livingston taking the win in heat number 2. Villanova will get 2 athletes into the final tomorrow. Jada Thomas also making it into the final. Then in the women's 400-meter dash, partner, one of your favorites, Leah Anderson, but we got to wait one more time for her because it was Kirsten Walker who was second in the last 2 championships, winning prelim number 1. And her number 1 competition, Leah Anderson, taking heat number 2. That should be a really, really fun competition tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see if she can double, because we know that she has in the past and she's come out victorious, so that'll be exciting. We'll see if anybody contests her.
One of the big storylines today in the 400 was Noah Woodard going down with that hamstring. Then he had to scratch from the 200. So now the field is more wide open on the men's side.
It's kind of crazy how things can happen. But, conference meet, it's unfortunate, and you feel for him, especially because he had posted the top times in both of those events. So he will be missing from his team. But like you mentioned, that does open things up for other schools to score some points here.
Then in the women's 100, Trudy Ann Williamson, who is probably the top contender for a title, definitely was pushed today. In fact, she got dipped at the line at the very end of the day. And so that'll be interesting as we get into day number 2. It was Brianna Davis of Connecticut, the freshman, who took the win in heat number 1. Then in preliminary number 2, it was really all Carson Fields for the second half of the race from Butler in the middle of your screen, running away with it. She's run 11:61 today, which is her best time of the season. And then in the third prelim, it was all Tori Carroll of DePaul. She's got the top time in the Big East this season, and she's coming for her first Big East individual title in that event. Over on the men's side, a couple of really good races. Adam Nelson, but then one of your favorites, O'Brien, the freshman from UConn.
It's always fun to see a freshman just ball out at conference like this, and he did very well in the 200 as well, as we'll see coming up.
O'Brien trying to go for the double on both sides. Meanwhile, Kyle Mastrangeli, who is one of the top competitors not only in the 100 but also in the 60 historically at the Big East Championships, he was splendid for DePaul in the outside lanes. Now we're getting into some of the distance events. In the women's 800-meter run, we had some fun, and a couple of different prelims offered opportunity to see some different race tactics today.
Oh, yeah. We see, when you go out first and early, sometimes it can pay off, sometimes not. We saw kind of both of those situations go down today.
In the women's 800, one of the interesting things, too, is we didn't get to see every single one of the top athletes who's run in the Big East this year because athletes are running in different events like the 1,500-meter. It was Catherine Modraw and Kathleen McIntosh getting through for both Georgetown Hoyas. And then in the men's 800, a good battle for the UConn Huskies and the Georgetown Hoyas. And then in prelim number 2, it was really all Georgetown. Then in the women's 400-meter hurdles, this is an interesting event. It's one of those events that the reigning Big East champ for the last 3 years, Allie Vogler, is no longer participating in because she graduated. That opens the door wide for the rest of the conference. Danielle Burns, somebody that has played second fiddle for many of the years, dating back to her beginnings in this conference. She is the front runner, and she was so strong in this event today. Smoking the field and running such a strong race, especially by herself. We look forward to watching her compete tomorrow. In the men's 400-meter hurdles, an interesting battle is brewing. We've got the reigning Big East champion from Villanova, but really he's got to contend with a number of guys in the second prelim. This is Keegan Hughes finishing strongly in heat number 1 in a time of 53:28. And then in the second go-around, we've got a couple of other folks like Wellington Ventura from UConn, who has run sub-51 this year for the Huskies. And, boy, he cruised to the finish in this prelim today, 53:18. Then in the women's 200 meters, we had some more action. Kirsten Walker, Carson Fields going 1-2 in the heat 1 of the women's 200. Then it was Chanel Coleman. Look at this on the outside from the junior out of UConn. Second best time in the Big East this year. Rolled to a win in the second prelim. But your friend Leah Anderson coming back in the third prelim. And, folks, she's trying to do the double tomorrow, winning back-to-back 200 and 400-meter golds at the Big East Outdoor Championships. Looked really good today as well. In the 200, we were missing Noah Woodard, but we had Adam Nelson, we had Brandon Voorhees, we had a loaded field, and that should be a very, very exciting race tomorrow. Wright from Marquette was spectacular. He ran 21:14, flying on a prelim, and you got to love this reaction at the end.
O'Brien. Olivier also ran a really great race today. She was strong from the front to back. She almost looked unbothered, even as she had someone on her back here. This is like the last lap headed into the bell lap, and she looked smooth the whole way. Oh, no, that was the final straight. Smooth. She looked even-keeled the whole way, front and end.
Olivier won the championship on the women's side in the 3K today. And then on the men's side, Parker Stokes, ranked 6th in the country, made a move at the end that you were really impressed with, Gabriella, and comes away with a Big East title.
You can see it's either a grimace or a smile or maybe both, but he made a bold move, and he just gutted it out for that win.
Then in the women's 10K, what can you say about Abby Wheeler? She's won a 3K championship, a 5K championship, and now in her first ever 10K in her career, she takes home gold.
She mentioned it was a little uncomfortable bumping up, but, she made it and she did very well, and now she's got options, too, for her future.
And then in the men's 10,000 meter, it was a good race for much of the afternoon, but the final mile belonged to Barry Keane, who repeats as your Big East champion. He's won back-to-back 10K crowns.